Welcome to Life Stories, where real moments meet raw emotion. Today's story is one of heartbreak, truth, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away from the people you once called family. It's about a father who gave everything only to be told he was never enough. But what happens when the love you give is replaced by betrayal? And what would you do if the child you raised called someone else dad? Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. You won't want to miss this powerful journey of love, loss, and letting go. I never imagined that my world could fall apart in a single sentence, but that's exactly what happened on a rainy Thursday night in early autumn. The leaves outside were golden and crisp, swirling in the wind like everything was perfectly ordinary. But inside our modest home in the suburbs of Manchester, everything was about to change. Emily, my daughter, or so I thought, stood before me, her fists clenched, her chest heaving with the fury only a teenager can summon. 16 years I'd raised her. 16 years of scraped knees, school projects, and quiet bedtime stories. Of teaching her to ride a bike, driving her to ballet, arguing over curfews, and crying silently after every fight, because I never wanted to be the kind of father she feared. I wasn't perfect. I was quiet, sometimes distant. I worked long hours at the accountancy firm, and when I came home, I often brought the stress with me. But I loved her. Dear God, I loved her more than life itself. That night, I caught her sneaking back into the house well past midnight, her shoes still wet from the pavement, trying to tiptoe past the creaky stair. I stood in the hallway, arms crossed. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, though my stomach twisted with worry. She didn't even flinch, rolled her eyes, tossed her coat on the banister. "None of your business." "You're under my roof, Emily," I replied, trying not to sound like a caricature of myself. "You don't get to disappear without telling me where you're going." And then she said it. The words I'll never forget. "You're not even my real dad. My other dad is better than you. Way better." It felt like a punch to the chest. No worse. A punch you expect, you brace for. This came out of nowhere. Her face twisted in defiance, her voice cracking slightly on better. But she stood her ground. I didn't speak. Couldn't. The silence between us grew thick, suffocating. My wife Jessica was sitting on the sofa nearby. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. And in that moment of hesitation, I knew. She didn't deny it. "Emily, go to your room," Jessica finally muttered. Emily gave me one last glare, half smug, half scared, and stomped upstairs. The echo of her footsteps on the hardwood felt like nails in a coffin. I stood there, hands clenched, heart racing, and turned slowly to Jessica. "You going to explain that?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. She looked down at her hands, picking at the hem of her sleeve like a child caught lying. "She's just angry, Mark. You know how teenagers are." She didn't mean it. Didn't she? I stepped closer. "You didn't exactly rush to correct her." She said nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen nursing a cold cup of tea, the kind that goes bitter after too long. I stared out the window, watching the wind beat the trees, my thoughts racing through every moment of the last 16 years. Was it all a lie? I remember the time, years ago, when Jessica was distant nights out with friends, that awkward laugh when I asked about a restaurant we'll for two. I had brushed it off. I told myself love meant trust. I told myself blood didn't matter. Emily was mine, always had been. But now I wasn't so sure. At around 2 in the morning, I heard a soft murmur. Emily's bedroom door was ajar, and her voice drifted down the hallway. "Yeah," I told him. She whispered into the phone. "He doesn't even know what to do. You're so much cooler than him, Dad." She said it again. "Dad, but not about me." My stomach turned. I leaned quietly against the wall, trying not to breathe too loud. "I can't wait to meet you for real," she added. And just like that, I understood. She had someone else in her head, someone who'd replaced me in her heart. And maybe it was my fault, or Jessica's, or his. I didn't know. But one thing was painfully clear. I wasn't her father anymore, not in her eyes, and something inside me broke. That was the night everything changed. The house felt different after that night, like I was living in a place I no longer belonged to. I went through the motions, work, home, sleep, but I wasn't really there. Not as a father, not as a husband, just a man occupying space in a life that had quietly shut him out. Emily avoided me with ease. No more shouting matches about homework or curfews, just silence. She floated in and out of the house like I was a ghost. Earbuds in, phone always clutched tight, eyes never meeting mine. Her rebellion had turned into quiet dismissal, and I who used to carry her on my shoulders through the park was now just background noise. Jessica noticed, of course. One morning, as she stirred her coffee a little too fast, she said, "You're just letting her run wild." She made it clear I don't get a say, I replied, not looking up from my laptop. She's got her other dad for that. Jessica flinched, but she didn't argue. She knew she'd let this happen, and I wasn't going to beg for a place in the family I'd built anymore. Still, something kept clawing at me. That voice Emily had used on the phone. The softness, the pride, the way she said dad, like it meant something sacred, and she hadn't just torn it from me like a page out of a book. Who was he? The question gnawed at me night after night. I remembered that one name I saw flash across her screen when she left her phone charging. Travis. No surname, just Travis. But it was a start. I pulled up our phone plan, thank God I still had access to that, and found his number. 6 late-night calls over the past month, always after midnight, always private. I ran the number through a reverse lookup, nothing. Prepaid, untraceable. But the internet has a way of unearthing even the best buried secrets. I found a forum thread about suspicious callers. One post mentioned a Travis who promised a modeling contract to a teenage girl, then vanished with £5,000. It was enough to make my skin crawl. I dug deeper and found a local news article, small-time fraudster. Travis Cole, arrested in Phoenix a few years back. The photo showed a man in his 30s, lean, confident, smug. Was it him? I couldn't be sure, but my gut told me yes. Later that night, I heard Emily whispering in her room again. I moved closer, just enough to catch a sliver of her voice. Yeah, he doesn't even care anymore. You're so much cooler. I can't wait to get out of here. I backed away, the weight of it all pressing hard against my chest. This Travis, this stranger, wasn't just in her phone. He was in her mind, her heart, and if he was who I suspected, she wasn't safe. I should have barged in, demanded answers, grounded her, but what would that change? She didn't trust me. She didn't want me. She'd chosen him. So I did the only thing I could. I started planning, not to win her back, not to reclaim the title of dad. That ship had sailed. No, I was going to protect her, whether she wanted me to or not. It was never about revenge. I need you to understand that. It wasn't about getting even with Jessica, or proving anything to Emily. I'd already lost the titles they'd once given me, husband, father. What remained was something simpler, but maybe more powerful. A duty. A last promise to the girl I had once rocked to sleep. So I made the call. Travis picked up on the second ring, his voice smooth, lazy, like he was already celebrating. Hello. This is Mark, I said, Emily's father. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Oh hey, mate, she's told me about you. I know what you're doing, I said flatly. You want her? Fine, she's yours. Name your price. He didn't even hesitate. 5 grand, cash, tomorrow night. I agreed, then hung up and called in a favor. A friend at work had a cousin in the police, Detective Harris. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to raise the alarm. That was all she needed. The next evening, I drove to a dark, empty warehouse car park just outside town. The kind of place you don't go unless you have something to hide. I brought the fake duffel bag and the tiny voice recorder I'd picked up weeks ago, tucked it in my jacket. My hands were shaking, but my mind was razor sharp. At 8 on the dot, Travis pulled in. His headlights cut through the misty air. Emily climbed out of the passenger side, looking unsure, like a child led too far from home. He grinned when he saw me. You brought the money? I held up the bag. Right here. But first, I want to hear your plan. I want to know exactly what you're going to do with her. He stepped closer, confident. Too confident. Kids like her. They trust too easy, he said. I'll get her out of here. Set her up somewhere nice. She thinks I'm her old man. Give it a few months. She'll do anything I ask. Help me make some cash. Then I'm gone. It's what I do. Emily froze. Her lips parted in disbelief. What? He turned to her and actually laughed. Relax, sweetheart. It's just business. That's when the sirens cut through the air like a blade. Flashing lights. Harris and 2 officers emerged from the shadows. Travis didn't even get to run. They were on him in seconds, cuffing him, reading him his rights. You set me up, he roared. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Emily was pale, shaking, her world spinning as fast as mine had weeks ago. We didn't speak. A female officer guided her gently to the car. Jessica was waiting when I got home. Where is she? What happened? She's safe, I said. He's gone. She tried to stop me, to talk, to mend, but there was nothing left to glue together. I saved her, I said quietly. That's all. I'm done. The next morning, I fixed Emily's old guitar snapped neck, missing strings. I left it outside her door. A small offering, a goodbye in the only language we once shared. Then I walked out of the house. Not in anger, not in defeat, but in peace. She didn't need to call me Dad anymore. I knew what I'd been, and that was enough. I didn't look back when I drove away. Not at the house, not at Jessica standing in the doorway, not even at the window where I used to wave goodnight to Emily. Some things aren't meant to be patched up. Some chapters end not with a slam, but with quiet acceptance. On the passenger seat sat a photo of the one of us at the seaside years ago. Emily, missing 2 front teeth, clinging to my hand. I didn't throw it away. I didn't need to. It no longer hurt the way it used to. It reminded me that for a long time, I was exactly what she needed. And maybe, just maybe, part of her would remember that too. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day she'll pick up that guitar, strum the chords I once taught her, and think of me not as the man she cast aside, but the one who stood quietly behind her when it mattered most. Life doesn't give us clean endings. It gives us choices. I chose to love her fully, even when it broke me. I chose to let go, not because I stopped caring, but because sometimes love means stepping back, not stepping in. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own quiet heartbreaks, your own moments of choosing love over pride, then thank you for listening. Subscribe to Life Stories to hear more real tales of love, loss, redemption, and the hidden courage in everyday lives. Leave a comment below, tell us where you are watching from. Who knows, we might just give you a shout out in the next one. Until then, take care of your heart. Some stories don't end, they evolve.